Lecture 23 The Four Elements of Reflection, Part 1. This is the 23rd lecture of the leadership course. In the previous lecture, we analyzed the essence of reflection. In this lecture, we will go further and master the four essential elements of reflection. Many leadership gurus emphasize reflection, such as Bennis, who said, reflection may be the key way we learn. Bennis also listed some ways of reflection, saying that the following are ways of reflection, including looking back, reminiscing, dreaming, writing a diary, speaking out loud, watching last week's game, seeking opinions, going on vacation, even telling jokes. What is your feeling after hearing these ways of reflection? You may be happy because you find that you are also using some ways, such as writing a diary. You may also be confused because you find that you don't know how to reflect through some ways, such as telling jokes. You may wonder how to reflect through telling jokes. I want to tell you that Bennis is both right and wrong. The ways he mentioned can be reflection, but not necessarily reflection. In fact, if you want to become an excellent leader, the most important thing is not to master a specific way or a few specific ways of reflection, but to master the essential elements of reflection. Reflection has four essential elements, which can also be said to be the four standards of reflection. If these four essential elements or standards are met, it is reflection. Writing a diary and telling jokes sometimes meet these standards, and sometimes do not, so sometimes they are reflection, and sometimes they are not. Next, I will specifically explain the four essential elements of reflection and some techniques to achieve these four essential elements. 1.to Extricate oneself. In the previous lecture, I discussed that the essence of reflection is to reflect on one's own thoughts. This is the core of reflection. The four elements of reflection are actually a specific expansion of this essence. To put it in a popular expression, it is the correct way to open up reflection, which consists of four steps. The first step, which is the first major element of reflection, is to step back. The essence of reflection is to reflect on one's own thoughts. You first have a thought, and then reflect on this thought, which is reflection. However, in order to reflect, you must first step back from the thought you already have. Therefore, the first major element of reflection is to step back and detach yourself from your existing thoughts. In the previous lecture, I mentioned a metaphor from leadership guru Heifetz, called getting on the balcony. Getting on the balcony means stepping back from the game. Stepping back may sound easy, but it is actually difficult. Psychologist Kahneman pointed out that when we think, we use the law of least effort, just like when we do physical labor. Another psychologist, Stanojevic, has another theory that we are all cognitive misers. The law of least effort and cognitive miserliness refer to the same phenomenon, which is that when we think, we have a guiding principle of how to do it as easily as possible. If we already have a thought or idea, most people will settle comfortably in that idea and not want to step back and reflect. Regarding stepping back, I will introduce a technique to you. This technique was used by management guru Drucker and is called feedback analysis. How do you do feedback analysis? Drucker said that before you make an important decision, write down the goals you expect to achieve. 1 year later, compare the actual goals you achieved with the expected goals you wrote down. This is feedback analysis. What are the advantages of feedback analysis? There are at least two. The first advantage is easy to see, which is pre-planning. You plan ahead and know that you will need to step back in the future. The second advantage may not be immediately apparent. The core action of feedback analysis is to write down the goals you expect in advance and compare them with the actual goals afterwards. The second advantage is in the action of writing down the expected goals in advance. Do you see the benefits of doing this? I just said that it is difficult to step back from your own thoughts, and I only mentioned one difficulty, which is that when you have a thought, you don't want to reflect on it to save effort. In fact, There is another difficulty in stepping back, which is that when you want to reflect afterwards, you have already forgotten what your original thought was. There is a concept in psychology called rationalization, which means that we consider the final result to be what we originally wanted. Therefore, before you take action, write down the goals you expect to achieve, which is actually writing down your original thought. This way, after a year, when you reflect back, you can know what your original thought really was. In other words, feedback analysis helps you discover your original thought and avoid the phenomenon of rationalization afterwards.